You're listening to The Balancing Act with your favorite radio personality, Nikki Marie.
Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Nikki Marie. I have an amazing guest joining me today. Her name is Dr. Shemena Johnson. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist that has been in private practice in Los Angeles, California for several years. She works with individuals and couples on in-depth core issues, helping them expand their consciousness, heal their wounds, and positively transform their lives. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the Black community and mental health. Dr. Shemena Johnson works with people of color to develop insight and critical think about matters such as race, anxiety, depression, sexuality, imposter syndrome, family dynamics, professional development, and empowerment. Her new course, Beautifully Black, Beautifully Aware, is a collection of concepts on various topics from childhood wounds, identity, relationships, and communication, and so much more. So stick around for the conversation that I had today with Dr. Shemena Johnson. And again, we talked about the Black community and mental health. Such an important and powerful topic. So stay tuned. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm fine, Nikki Marie. Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is one of the topics that I love to talk about, which is the Black community and mental health. Being a Black therapist, I've had my own journey, so I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a topic that we've heard a lot very recently, with the pandemic. Everyone is now coming forward with, just talking more about mental health, and this being Awareness Month. For a lot of us, it's been a normal conversation, but then you have a lot of others who feel like this is a conversation that should not even take place outside of your home. You may have heard this before: what happens here stays here, or give it to God, or pray it away. Especially in our community, we're not as open. And why do you think that is?
There are a lot of factors. I grew up under the same, rubric, having family that was Baptist based in religion, and, pretty much everything that we would discuss stayed in the home. And that, I think, had a lot of consequences to my own mental health, and I believe also to the mental health of the Black community, which is this idea of secrecy and this feeling of shame that what you're feeling and what you're processing and what you're going through is something to hide from other people. Obviously, that has historical connections. But what it does is it really puts Black people under the ground. It's like basically on a boat and rudderless, because you don't really get the opportunity to develop, I think, the tools to learn how to manage, I think, these really strong emotions, such as racism or feeling rage or sadness or unhappiness about the state of the world and its impact on you. It's like you're taught to really repress it. And that leads to, anxiety, depression, feelings of self-hatred. So it does have its consequences, Nikki. Mary.
What do you think some of those consequences are? Because I feel like when we are silent, we have so many different things going on, especially like with generational trauma. We may have a parent who hasn't sought the help that they needed, and now they're taking their anger, their frustration, their sadness, and they're putting it onto their children. So do you mean in that way or a different way?
I'll speak about it, in both ways, Nikki Marie. Like you mentioned, when you've been silenced, like when you think about it on a global level, how much of this is not just about being silenced on a macro level, when we talk about white privilege and, being in this world. So you're being silenced on that level, but then you're also being silenced on an interpersonal level, even within the context of the family. So it's a double whammy. So you're really adopting, a view and a belief from a larger world that I think when you internalize it, of like, I'm being silenced out here and now I'm also being silenced in my family, where do you go?
Right.
There's really nowhere to go. And I think part of that process is learning how to break free from, these kind of shackles of, if I have a mother, and I know families and also parents who are not psychologically savvy, have their own generational trauma. But, I do believe that when you get to an age of, let's say, 18, 19, you're practically an adult. You have the power to actually question these things. Yeah. You're not like underneath your parents' thumb anymore.
Right.
But I do realize how those belief systems perpetuate themselves.
I mean, if we take it back to history, history plays a role in a lot of our lives. But if we go back to the history part of Black people in America, we're talking about dehumanization, oppression, violence, and what we're witnessing through the lens of people who are going out there and clicking record on these devices. We see racism, we see police brutality, we see divisive political rhetoric. How do we process all of that? I mean, it's like we're seeing it, in most cases, we're seeing it in real time. I mean, George Floyd, to be exact.
Sure.
I felt like I was triggered to be angry and to, the rage within me wanted to do so much because I'm looking at this video.
Sure.
So,
as you should, Nikki Marie, like as you should be rageful.
Yeah.
I believe, being angry and rageful of what has happened, the experience, the effects of racism, of being silenced, ignored, shut down, cut off. Like it is a feeling that is palpable, to be rageful. But the question is when I have that rage, what do I do with it?
Right.
Do I, this is kind of a provocative statement, but do I like go and do I just eat all my feelings away? Or do I really take a different path, which is to learn to understand what that means for me? Because rage, I think, for a Black individual, and even as I counsel a lot of clients in my office, is something that I embrace and I help my clients embrace, because it's such a real aspect of the Black experience of feeling the rage and the pain of being silenced, but also trying to transform it into something much more powerful and empowering. When you can't name this pain that you go through, then it goes unchecked.
Wow.
So when you are able to name the pain, then you can acknowledge the feelings, and then the feelings have a space in order to breathe. I'm talking about George Floyd, I can't breathe. To breathe, and then when you can breathe, you can actually regulate your emotions a little bit better.
That makes sense. I actually had a moment of I guess a breakdown or a meltdown, whatever you want to call it. But I had something, and I called a friend of mine who is a strategic self-care planner. Okay. And I said, I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I don't know how I got to this place.
Right. Yeah.
So she kind of walked me through just recognizing what it is or what happened and what type of overwhelming do I feel. And it was actually it was a good overwhelming feeling, because I got so much praise, but then I felt sadness at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk me through maybe what, without like full on saying that, diagnosing
when you talk about the sadness, Nikki Marie, like even the sadness that you felt, how did you view it? Did you view it as something, a feeling that was, did it feel like I was weak, or did I feel, did it feel kind of relieving? Like, what was that experience like? How did you make meaning of that experience for yourself?
I felt almost sad because I just felt maybe I got too much love. Is that possible, to feel like you have too much of something good?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
But what did it mean to you to have too much, something so much good?
Almost like I wasn't deserving of it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like I deserved that much love.
Right. And that, just even hearing you say that to me, even as a Black woman, like, how did we get to this place where we were we didn't deserve too much love?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is how you start to walk back and trace all the historical antecedents of racism and slavery and feeling less than. It exudes, like I said, it's a core issue for most Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't deserve. And when I don't deserve, then I do a lot of things that show that I don't deserve.
Wow.
So it's a really, the sadness and the grief is actually a healthy reaction. There's a lot of grief and sadness in knowing, one, I think the beauty of being Black in this world, but also a lot of sadness and grief of knowing how horrible Black people have been treated.
Yeah.
And I think that is the grieving process that we all have to be in touch with, to really mourn and grieve. Like, it is sad, but it's not our shame. It is the nation's shame.
Mm. And that's so hard to separate the difference.
Yeah, it is. It all gets intermingled, in our lives. And so going back to what you were saying, like, how do you start to walk back? It is so complex, how much that Black individuals have to walk back from and transcend in their lives, to really find a sense of health, find a sense of well-being, to find a sense of peace where your resting state is not from a place of anxiety.
Well, how do we recognize when we are having a moment of anxiety? Or maybe not recognizing while we're in it, but before we get to that point. Like, my husband has moments where he feels very anxious and he doesn't know where it's coming from or how it happened, but he has severe anxiety. It could be just him coming home and getting undressed, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm feeling very anxious for some reason. Again,
I mean, anxiety actually is kind of ubiquitous in the world. It's not, I don't really consider it a bad thing. I think there's a level of anxiety that's quite healthy, but it's pretty ubiquitous. But how do you understand it? The question becomes, how do you understand your experience of anxiety, the nervousness, the stress? Is it because, can I ask myself, where is this coming from? Is it because of something that's objectively happening outside of me? Or is it something that's happening within me for psychological reasons? I don't know. Maybe I am, anxious, speaking about your husband. Maybe I'm anxious coming home because I feel all of this pressure, to be a certain person to my wife. Okay. Or maybe I just had a hard day at work.
Right.
It's like, where is it coming from? And it could be a combination of both. But if I don't ask myself this question. How can I ever learn to discover what's happening within me?
Yeah.
I like to say to, a lot of people, what is denied and what we don't talk about, I can't fix it if I don't know what it is.
Wow.
So we, have to question these things.
Yeah.
And I know, just growing up in a family that never questioned anything.
Nope.
We didn't question anything. We just took everything as truth.
Yep.
Like it really, being a therapist, I had to disabuse myself of a lot of things that I was told to do. I had to really question and say like, wait, this doesn't make sense. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. This is not normal. And why am I depressed? And that's something I can't just pray away.
But you made a very good point, because it's almost like when your parent says, don't touch the stove, and the child says, why? Why can't I touch the stove? And the parent says, because I said so. It's not really, you didn't give me a real answer on the consequences of touching that stove. You just said, because I said so. So now I'm curious. What happens when I touch the stove? So it's kind of like when you say, ask yourself that question, it's so hard. It's so hard to sit and say, well, why am I feeling this way?
What do you think, what made it hard for you? I mean, I can speak as well, but what do you think made it hard for you?
I think it's just the fact of the disconnect sometimes. Like I almost feel like I don't know myself. So then I don't really know how to ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And it's like my brain says, because I said so. You're feeling this way because I said so. But it's not really any defined response.
Yeah.
So even yesterday, I felt like it was almost like a moment of gratitude, but then there was also a mixture of, I felt alone because the kids were gone, my husband's gone, everyone is out the house, I don't know who to talk to, my mom's not answering my calls, just so many different feelings and emotions all at once. But then I just started, with my podcast, and I felt better.
Interesting.
Right.
Like you gave voice to the part of you that was silenced and felt like you couldn't speak. You gave voice to it. And I'm very psychoanalytic in my thinking. I've done a lot of depth work psychologically. One of the things that, Freud would say is that, when we speak and speak and speak and talk and give voice, we do come to a place of understanding of ourselves. And I do believe that, like, when you're silenced and you amputate that part of yourself, it is a lonely feeling, because where do I get the space to acknowledge what I'm feeling?
Yeah.
And part of that is, can I talk to somebody? Can I even journal about it? Or can I, even just say it even to myself, speak the unspeakable to myself, so that I can have some space to connect. And then, when you are speaking to yourself, there's an I there, and that is a connection to yourself.
Yeah. You're reconnected.
Yeah, you're connected again. It's just, we have to be conscious of that. Being very conscious and aware of, like, I am feeling so disconnected, and how we connect is by being conscious and speaking the unspeakable.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it is, or how great it is.
A lot of people, for some reason, think that celebrities have it all. In terms of, they have wealth, so they obviously have great mental health. I'm not sure if you saw this very recently, but Lizzo, the singer, she was very vocal about feeling, I guess, alone and felt like she didn't have love.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then she came back on and said something about self-care and, taking that moment. How can we process when we feel like that? Because everyone's self-care looks a little different.
Sure. And the higher we climb, not that, we don't all deal with our own mental health. It's just the higher we climb, it becomes a little bit more complicated in how we navigate self-care, because there's more eyes on you. There are more things at stake.
Yeah.
So we transcend, that feeling of trying to take care of ourselves by really starting at a basic level, which is learning how to question our experience. How do we understand ourselves? Depression, anxiety, like it may look different in different people. Doesn't mean that we're not all experiencing it. Right. But the way you tackle it is all the same. Yeah. And, there's some individuals who don't have the resources of just, being able to go see a therapist. But that doesn't mean that you can't process this. There's journaling, there's a lot of self-help books. They're just like plentiful on the market that can be a pathway to help you start thinking about yourself in a psychological way.
Yes. I feel like you've been teaching me. And
go ahead.
I know that you have beautifully Black and beautifully aware. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at some of the lessons and I was like, I'm actually going to sign up.
I hope you do.
Yeah. Understanding the self and childhood wounds. Mm-hmm. That's going to be me.
I will, it was a passion project for me. After, so many years of growth on my personal journey, but also in the room, therapy-wise, I see so many individuals. It was one of the things that I wanted to be able to give back to, the Black community, especially Black women, because I didn't always know how to question myself and to think about my feelings. Yeah. And a lot of family issues, challenges, dysfunction started to get played out in my relationships and also how I saw myself in my education, but also in my career as a therapist. It's the idea of, I'm starting being an entrepreneur, building my business, and I'm feeling like my name is Dr. Shemena Johnson, and I have Victoria Williams who's like next to me, and I still feel less than, and I'm feeling like I can't charge as much as she charges. So I started to see how the ripple effects of childhood wounds with family, being Black, how that really infiltrates so many different areas of a Black woman's life or Black people's lives. And, it's this, I wanted to feel empowered and build. I wanted individuals to feel empowered and know that they can build their sense of self-esteem and show the world that they have not only the abilities and the skill set, but also have a sense of confidence. Mm-hmm. In how they show up in the world. And it's, not like I'm this great, amazing artist and I'm just painting a kid's bedroom every day. Like, to be able to show that I am like this great person and have a sense of confidence and hold my head high. Yeah. And that is, really questioning ourselves, asking ourselves the important questions and like dealing with our feelings and processing them. Because if you don't deal with your feelings, they do deal with you. That is, they deal with you. Anxiety, depression.
Absolutely. And I just wanted a little bit more information on why name the course Beautifully Black, Beautifully Aware.
It's a great name, isn't it?
It is a wonderful name. 'Cause I would love, I'm Black and beautiful, okay, and I'm aware. But, for some people, and I think maybe it's because of how I see things transitioning, there's a moment where there's so much unity in the Black community when things are tough. But then I see us kind of move away from each other, like we're gravitating away from each other after we've gained something. I mean, and this is how I see it. This is my personal opinion and thought. When the situation happened with George Floyd, or Eric Gardner, like so many others, we're united.
Yeah.
And then it seems we divide again.
Sure. Nikki Marie, like you bring up something that's very important that I think does not get a lot of airtime, which is learning how to deal with our own feelings of self-hatred and our own internalized racism, even towards ourselves. That does not get a lot of airtime. I think it's easy, to look at it objectively. And I think it's also important, the racism that's outside in the world, because it's me versus them. And so I could band together. But how do we look at our own internalized racism and how we navigate that even within our own culture, even within our own group of even the way we communicate with each other of, sometimes you're not Black enough. What does that mean? You're not Black enough. What you're doing is not Black enough. And it's all based on stereotypes.
Or take the Black card.
Exactly.
If I say something that you don't agree with, you're going to take my Black card.
Right. So, all of these things that we say to one another, is this idea of all interpersonal, this implied sense of racism of look how we are putting each other underground by how we communicate, because we haven't really dealt with what am I really saying to this person who is like me, who also has pain, maybe in different ways, but also has struggled. That they're not Black enough. Black is, it is not a monolith. There's so many ways of being Black. And I think that is the beauty of being Black. But we have to really check ourselves and think about how we are communicating to one another. And that, I think, is a deeper issue. Like I said, that does not get a lot of airtime. I speak about it openly, even in my work. With my clients, I've even had to deal with my own feelings of, self-hatred and internalized racism. But you have to deal with it so that you can actually be freer and more open to be with other people. You have to.
Yeah. Well,
but I appreciate you bringing that up, because a lot of people do not talk about that.
I mean, it's just, perception is reality. And that's how I perceive things to be very different. Even if, you show a pretty picture of a beautiful Black family, it's not always what it seems. The picture is not always what it seems. But I find it that, even with some of our Black men, traditionally, when they're living above poverty level, they tend to stay away from Black women. So do you think that there's something there as well with that self-hatred? Or is that just because they feel like they're in a different earning level or something, that they can't come back and say, hey, I love my Black women?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I'm sure that there are other factors that, do a fact like that are a part of that. But I do believe that it's both of what you just named.
Yeah.
It's this idea of once I have climbed this high rank, high, and, I'm making lots of money, I want to align myself, with, I want to align myself with the elite, with privilege and whiteness, on some level that feels like I have gotten the keys to the kingdom. So I think there's that part.
Yeah.
And there might also be some other pieces, which is, feelings of internalized racism. I think they all can actually be, part of the whole equation. When individuals do climb very high, it's like, I don't want to be connected, to all of what I've come from, and some of that could be history, family. I can't really speak on it, but, I think it's both.
Yeah. Wow. I wasn't expecting that response.
What were you expecting?
No, this is a real talk moment, guys. Give it to him straight, no chaser.
Yeah, no, I believe in being real. I mean, it is a reality that I think that we have to, face and contend with, as well as, Black women in the community who are crushing it, as far as education and entrepreneurship and building businesses, and then they're not able to date and meet someone, find their person, and feeling like they have to settle. So there's all of that is, a dynamic that comes into play.
Well, you are in Los Angeles, California.
Yes, I am.
And you've been in your private practice for several years, and had the ability to work with not just individuals but couples.
Yes.
And a lot of times we talk about relationships on this on this podcast. So this coming up show, we actually have myself and two other relationship therapists or mental health experts who are going to be talking about getting back with your ex. Getting back with an ex, the Bennifer effect, J-Lo and Ben Affleck.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to kind of get your take on getting back with an ex, because it's kind of like a past. You had to go through the past, and I don't know how to say, like, when I think of an ex, I think of my past.
Sure.
And how I had to get over the breakup and move on and transition possibly into a new relationship. But now I'm going backwards. Is that hurting myself again? And, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking that there's going to be a different result to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of that when I think of someone saying, well, you're going to get back with your ex. I'm like, why would I go through that again?
Mm-hmm.
Is that like self-inflicted pain? Like, I have so many thoughts and questions, and I know we're almost out of time, but
I don't know if it's because of time. I'll just kind of give you how I think about it. What's different? What's going to be different?
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself that, like, what's going to be different from what were the issues then and now?
Wow.
And if you can't answer that question of what's different, then you have your answer.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Because there's a reason, like you said, that they're your ex. And so you want to ask yourself, what is going to be different now that I was not then?
Yeah. Wow. Well, so beautifully Black, beautifully aware. Please tell everyone how they can find more information and how they can participate in this course that you have.
Sure. Well, you can go to my website, shemenajohnson.com, and you can get access to the course through there. I think that's the easiest way. And also, I have lots of blog articles that I talk about, with mental health and, just general topics. And also, I have my podcast, Dark Matters with Dr. Shemena, where I do talk about other things. It's kind of a shorter, condensed version. But nonetheless, I think I pack a lot in like maybe 10 minutes. I just give you like a brief tidbits, but I do pack a lot. But you can check Dark Matters out with Dr. Shemena. I'm on Spotify and Apple. But Beautifully Black and Beautifully Aware, you can access it through my website. And it's a great course.
There's so many different topics. And I know there's videos and then there's interactive exercises.
Mm-hmm. There are a series of videos of me talking, breaking down these different concepts from childhood wounds to learning how to communicate love and intimacy. Also, I believe there's also a topic also on I'm drawing a blank now, but
am I crazy or I'm feeling?
Am I crazy? Talking about your feelings. Thank you for that. Am I crazy or feel? That is really focusing on learning how to understand your feelings. Yeah. Because a lot of times we don't really know what we're feeling, and we're disconnected, as we talked about, and we got to do that deep dive. So these are all the topics. So it's me kind of doing a presentation, doing a video, talking you through it. And then there's some guided exercises that you can take, at the end of most of the segments. And then at the end, I do a really nice recap. So you can kind of start your journey, on self-discovery.
Oh, you're using my line now. I always tell everyone that I am on this road of self-discovery and recovery, and I will be taking your lessons. This part, am I crazy or I'm feeling some kind of way? This would help with what I was saying in the beginning. I almost feel that moment of disconnect.
Yeah.
So to understand these feelings, emotions when I'm going through it, and communicating your needs is going to be so helpful for me and everyone who's listening and watching. So thank you so much for creating this.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy, and I hope the people who, if you log on, take the course, I hope you enjoy too. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Contact me, by email or through my website. And, I'm very accessible to answer whatever questions you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki Marie. This was great.
This was helpful. I almost felt like I had a little therapy session. So thank you. In our community, it's necessary. Okay. It's necessary for growth. Yes. Talking through it, breaking the silence. So thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
For everyone else, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at Nikki Marie _radio. Thank you so much. Keep tuning in.